Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Writing What You Know. I'm Gwyneth Dhillon, one of the board members for the Victoria Festival of Authors. And I want to begin by, first of all, although this is a virtual event, Victoria Festival of Authors is located on the traditional ancestral territory of the Lekwungen people, also known as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. With respect and gratitude, we wish to begin today acknowledging the ancestors, hereditary leaders, and matriarchs, as well as the creators from these lands, and give thanks for the privilege of living and working here. We are committed to serving as learners and listeners. Today, our panel features authors Michelle Poirier-Brown, Daniel Allen Cox, Paul Dhillon, and Sandhu Ibrahim. We want to begin also with thank you for our sponsors, the Canadian Council of the Arts, the CRD, the City of Victoria, the Victoria Foundation, the Walrus, and Monroe's Books. This event, as all Victoria Festival of Author events, offers closed captioning. So please click on the double C at the bottom of your screen to view captions. Please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen if you have questions for us or for the authors during the event. The moderator, Ian Higgins, will be able to get to some of the questions near the end of the panel. So at this point, I'm going to introduce our moderator for this afternoon, Ian Higgins. Ian is a writer, translator, critic, and professor, and a member of the English Department and Medieval Studies program at the University of Victoria. His books include Then Again, The Invention of Poetry, The Book of John Mandeville, medieval travel book, and The Writing East, The Travels of Sir John Sir Mandeville. Ian is also currently serving as the editor of the Malahat Review. So thank you very much and welcome, Ian, and I look forward to a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Gwyneth. I'd also like to welcome everyone to this virtual event, Writing Who You Know, and thank you all for attending. I've already been introduced, so I don't need to introduce myself, except to say that I'm also here as an uninvited guest on unceded Indigenous lands today at the University of Victoria. And so as a settler and the child of immigrants to the nation state of Canada, I want to begin our session in a good way by saying I acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen, Songhees and Esquimalt peoples on whose territory the university stands, and the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. A territorial acknowledgement like this one is a small way of recognizing not only relationships, but also the ethical and other responsibilities that relationships involve. And I'm grateful to be able to live and work on the land, in the waters here, where the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples have taken such care of them and the other beings since time immemorial. As it happens, questions of relationships and their ensuing responsibilities are also the subject of today's discussion amongst four wonderful writers of compelling creative nonfiction. All writing necessarily involves questions of writers' relationships to their language, to their subjects, and to their readers and hearers, but in creative nonfiction, especially where the matter is personal, writers' relationships to their subjects are likely to be the most challenging. As you probably are, I'm excited to hear how these four writers work to attend to the responsibilities and challenges they face in writing Who You Know. To get us started, I will briefly introduce all four writers in the order of their readings today. Each reading will last about 5 minutes and will be followed by about 10 minutes of discussion amongst the four panelists. So we have, as if this were a literary basketball game, 4 quarters, and then we have a little bit of overtime for questions at the end. Today's first reader is Michelle Poirier-Brown, who has already appeared at the festival in another event. Michelle is a Cree Métis poet, performer, and photographer living on unceded Syilx territory in Vernon, British Columbia, and the author of, amongst other things, the Amnio Journal, which appeared in the Malahat Review in 2020. Following Michelle will be Daniel Allen Cox, who's beaming in all the way from Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal. Daniel is the author of 4 novels, and I Felt the End Before It Came, Memoirs of a Queer Ex-Jehovah's Witness. I think you'll be reading from that today. Daniel has had 2 essays recently in the Malahat Review. After Daniel will come Sandhu Ibrahim, an Egyptian-German immigrant, settler, and uninvited guest currently living on Lekwungen territory as well. Sandy was shortlisted for the Malahat Review's 2022 Constance Rook Prize for preparing the eulogy, from which I think she's going to be reading today. And then last, but not least at all, is Paul Dhillon, a second-generation newcomer to Canada, who's joining us from his home on the unceded and ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Two of Paul's essays have also recently appeared in the Malahat Review. So, and now without further ado, to our first reader, please welcome Michelle.
Afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be reading from this book. And doesn't the Malahat always have the best covers? Totally. The Amnio, I'm going to be reading the first two sections from the Amnio Journal. 18 January 1994, 8:45 p.m. Today is Tuesday. On Friday, I will consider myself a full 20 weeks pregnant with my second child, my second miracle baby. Annalie, my first, was born 3 years, 4 months, and 18 days ago, 9 pounds, 2 ounces, with a gleam of golden red hair on her perfectly round head. Pink and gold, she looked to me like a softly breathing peach. Annalie's conception came as a surprise. At the time, I was only just beginning to reevaluate a long-held conviction that I would never, ever have children. She was conceived while I was still in a relationship, albeit tenuously, with a man who had repeatedly stated he did not want to have a child. Conceived while I was still using the same form of contraception that had served me well for 12 years. Conceived despite a bout of pelvic inflammatory disease that hospitalized me for a week in adolescence, and which doctors said would probably leave me infertile. Conceived despite the fact I ovulate, at best, 3 times a year. And I can say, despite the turbulence of those times, conceived in love. This child, by contrast, was a much sought after conception, a small slice of a wedge of commitment. I enrolled in an herbalism workshop for women. I learned to check my vagina for spinbarkite mucus, or, get this, hostile mucus. I underwent a 10-week round of acupuncture treatment. Finally, an ovulation. Another exactly 28 days later. Thinking this conception might have to be the greatest science experiment a librarian and a speechwriter might ever conduct, Doug and I even purchased a clean, new turkey baster. Nature won the day, however, and we got to leave the baster in the bedroom, unwrapped, until the winter solstice, when we brought it out for an actual turkey basting. This child is choice. This child is desire. And yesterday we learned that this child has a higher than usual risk of having Down syndrome. 19 January 1994, 7:57 p.m. For the second day in a row, I tied back my waist-length hair and wore earrings. Early in this pregnancy, I'd lost energy for the fuss and bother of grooming routines. I went to work clean and comfortable, wearing no metal save a watch and wedding ring, and never pantyhose. But to adorn myself today was to say, I will not be undone by this. And so I bared my long neck and put on ornaments. And today even seemed normal. The shock of that first afternoon is past. After the doctor called, I came home. My daughter's father, who cares for her much of the time while I work, saw the fear in my face. Without understanding its source, he immediately crossed the carefully maintained boundary that keeps our relationship peaceable. He held me while I wept. Annalie left with her father for an afternoon at daycare. I was alone in the house until Doug arrived home from the university. We held each other and cried, separated, wandered the house, stared out of windows, and then met again, once in the hall, later by the kitchen sink, to cry again. It was January, but by prairie standards, what we experience in Victoria in January is spring. We went to the garden, considered moving the vegetable beds, checked the herbs, planned a raspberry patch. Thinking was as yet out of the question. It was all we could do to make room for the fear. Doug, in his wisdom, made sure we ate. The busy work of getting a 3-year-old suppered and bathed, storied, songed, and bedded provided the bridge we needed to get from feeling to thinking. By evening, we were ready to walk the terrain of some major decisions.
Paul, would you like to start the discussion?
Absolutely. Shell, thank you so much. Just hearing that piece, I love it in the Malahat, but hearing you read it takes a completely different context and pace and pathos to it. Obviously, the topic of our conversations, Ryan, who we know today, given the possibility of the possible pain and upsetness that could come from writing about people in your life, why do you still decide to do it?
I bet my situation is not that dissimilar from the three of you, and possibly you as well, Ian, in that I don't think we choose to write at all. The Amnio Journal was something that clearly it is, it's not a very inventive title, because that's exactly what it was. It was the journal that I kept from the day I found out, got the blood test results, to the day I got the Amnio results. I kept a journal, and that's what it is. And for me, writing is always a way of processing complicated feelings. And I think that's what we're experiencing when we're writing about the people that we know. We're writing about the people that we know because of the complicated feelings that we have about those people. And then maybe for later in the discussion, we could talk about the decision to publish what we've written, which I think is a completely separate question. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else want to jump in on that topic?
Daniel, you want to?
Sure. What a moving Michelle, back when I first read it and rereading it, of course, and hearing it again. And there are so many layers, of course, when we're writing about the lives of others, because we intersect so immediately with the lives of others. I'm just wondering what it was like for you in this piece with writing about a child who isn't born yet. Is a whole other layer, right? Right. There are people who are, in the room with us, and then who have yet to come. I imagine there's like a lot of future considerations there as well that complicated things for you.
I think at the time it wasn't so much, because it was just this raw processing. This piece sat in a drawer for, I think, 26 years before I sent it anywhere. However, before it came out, I wanted that child, who was now a grown woman and was at the time when she, can't exactly remember the exact timing of it, but I sent it to her to read, and I knew that she was planning to have a family of her own. And that was an interesting thing for her to read this. And she's trained as a doula, so being with women who are going through difficult experiences in pregnancy is her profession. And we had a nice exchange about that. And yeah, I think it was an interesting moment for her to reflect on her in utero life at the time when she was a grown adult and contemplating her own family.
Sandy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just have a quick question about that. So after your daughter read the piece, did that change the dynamic between the two of you in any way?
No, I don't think that it did. This particular piece, I think the fact that I've written an entire book that's called "You Might Be Sorry You Read This," which is also memoir, and I'm not even certain who in my family has read that and who hasn't read it. But I do know that of the members that have read it, I think it recontextualizes me. And I think even this piece, to a certain degree, recontextualized me because it showed that my daughter and I were in relationship even before she was born. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out here is the sense of entanglement that we have as human beings with other human beings. And then given what you were saying, Michelle, that there's a kind of almost like a fungal nature to our writing and our relationships where there are these underground networks, right? And we don't know sometimes when they're going to emerge and become part of our lives again. And so they have these long and complex relationships. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Daniel so that we can keep going here. And Daniel, you're going to read next, and then we'll pick up this discussion again.
Thanks so much, Michelle and Ian. Yes, I'll be reading from my memoir, I Felt the End Before It Came. It's a section that I've been actually considering lately because as I revisit this page with the panel in mind, I came across a page where every single word, or so I could tell, was transformed in some way by either conversations I had or by letters I found. And it kind of like refreshed my memory that in families, people remember things differently and they reveal different sides of themselves, all depending who they're talking to. And that adds a complexity, I think, that then as writers, we kind of have to deal with when writing our text. So the piece I'll read has the word "the society" in it, and that's just Jehovah's Witness lingo for the hierarchy of the group when you hear that. When I was living in New York in my 20s, I booked a seat to Tampa on a discount airline that lost my bag, but I didn't care because I was going to see my grandma Dee. I knew better then to expect my Aunt Joanne to let me into her house. By then, she knew I was a diseased apostate. Like my mom, Grandma didn't shun me. She accepted and loved me for who I was. She didn't make a practice of shunning anyone, least of all family. Humans were always more important to her than doctrine. As far as I could tell, she didn't attend JW meetings often, but the family pretended she did. She tolerated my grandfather's religious zeal and outwardly went along with it. I never saw her preach door to door, probably because of the stutter she and I share. If she ever stopped believing, it would be easier for her to coast along this way than to face the social rupture that results from expressing doubts. It's occurred to me that my mother has probably modeled her version of being a JW on Grandma. A toe in when it's convenient, interpreting certain rules creatively, ignoring ones that are inhumane. I was raised by loving women for whom shunning doesn't come naturally, and who, when asked to do it, refuse. It's also occurred to me that maybe they're the reason I've never considered being a Jehovah's Witness a binary. My mother disputes this interpretation. She says that her reason for not shunning me is that I was just a baby when I was baptized at 13, and when I left at 18, barely old enough to know what I was doing in either case. I'm sure Grandma had her own moments of zeal, those sudden pangs of fear that the society cultivates so well in its members. She sent a letter to me the year before I flew from New York to visit her. I guess you know that your mom told me you disassociated yourself from the congregation, she writes. It was very distressful news to us. And I know that your mom is devastated too. Whatever the problem, please don't let family or friends influence you in any way. You know our future happiness only comes from God. Jehovah is always there for us like a close friend. We wouldn't want to find ourselves on the outside when we know that the time is getting nearer for this system to end. When she got to the part about my being an inspiration to us all, the horror of a new question bloomed in me. Had I been the super witness in the family all these years, with everyone following my example? But when we were together, Grandma D spoke to me differently. This kind of cognitive dissonance of living in multiple realities at once is very common among Jehovah's Witnesses.
I don't remember who was going to ask the first question here. Is it you, Sandy?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's me. Thank you so much for that reading. I read your piece of the Malahat on a similar subject and really loved it. And a question occurred to me as you were reading. Is there a reader that you really wish would pick up that work? Were you writing to someone specifically?
Excellent question. I mean, thank you, first of all, for having read the piece beforehand. When writing this book, one of my intentions of many was to counteract kind of like an oversimplified cult exits narrative, right? Because we're told, or there's a certain kind of narrative that we see like in media about high control groups and cults, which is once you're out, you're out. Once you make that break, it's over. And I think I wanted to show as Ian mentioned, the entanglements that, we can't exactly extract ourselves all that easily, right? From the good or the bad. And so in my mind, I wanted to kind of like target people who were looking for that complexity, who knew it existed and just exactly weren't sure how. And this answer makes sense to me cerebrally, but then at the same time, I also know in my heart, I think about teenagers, right? Who are in groups like this, or just who are in situations like this, right? Who recognize some of those like manipulations and aren't exactly sure how to say something about them or to shine like a light on them. So in my first answer, it's like a broader audience, and then as the book now has been out for like 6 months, I kind of realize there's like a teenage demographic here, and who's hurting in a very particular way. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Paul, yes.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing from your work. I'm excited to read the book. I love the pieces in the Malahat. Given the idea of the name Jehovah Witness and write in as witness to people around us, to our past selves, how has that word witness for yourself evolved or continues to evolve? And thinking about that time, thinking about who you are now and the future artist.
What a prescient question. I'm going to focus on the future artist. Now I have something to aspire to, which is the future artist in me. It's funny you should mention a witness, right? Because this book is really me trying to like unpack a lot of the cultish lingo I was actually raised with and trying to reframe it into something with more of a queer possibility, right? That I could live through, even if I've already done some of that, to just understand the reframing work that I've already done. While I was working on the manuscript with my editor, I used the word witness in my text unselfconsciously to mean preach, like to give a witness, right? And he's like, okay, but that's not what the word means, you know? And so we had a little bit of a correspondence there about my continued oversight, you know, as to what these words actually mean. Yeah, so I think witness is to acknowledge that our lives are very intertwined, to acknowledge that some stories are ours and not ours. And when it's like a shared story, where do you cut that jigsaw line, right? In the shared story, what's on your side of it and what's on someone else's side of it? And how do we be ultimately compassionate to that person and to ourselves by extension? And also, what are the risks? And so for me, it's about the stakes, right? If we're giving witness to something, we are, to a certain extent, shining a light on it. And not everyone will be comfortable with that light. So the stakes are of ultimate importance, I think, in that question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel, you've almost signaled. I had this question in mind, and it's like you've also set the question up, because it occurred to me that we have to confront, in a way, loyalties. And even if we change our circumstances and we make choices to take ourselves out of one situation and into another, there's still a kind of underlying loyalty to something. I think that might be true of like people who change countries might, most readily be able to understand that, where we still cheer for a Canadian sports team even when we're living in another country. And so I love the way I just love that metaphor, the jigsaw piece, where you're saying, okay, where is this boundary line? But I'm also wondering if also you had to confront that. Like, did you find that urge to loyalty at any time holding you back as you were writing, even though you were no longer loyal to the faith?
Wow. Yes. Thank you for all this insight. Absolutely. There were times when I found myself trying to defend the group, because I knew that when the book came out, some people would use it, right, to say, and rightly so, look at these unfair ways that they manipulate members. And then I found myself clawing back against that a bit and putting defenses in different places. And then I guess this is part of the work of fairness. When you know that a group that you're writing about might not have a say in what you're writing. And just one example came up was the importance of Jehovah's Witnesses in the fight for freedom of religion within Canada. They're huge in that. They're at the center of that, right? So this is a complexity I had to actually wrestle with. At the same time, this word loyalty, and I don't want to take up too much time here, and so like I'll wrap up because we do need to get to Sandy's, of course, Sandy's reading. But I think when analyzing whether like a group is a cult or not, a question that's often asked is what are the terms of exit? Can you exit freely or not? Or is loyalty the most important thing to them? And so there's a certain kind of loyalty that I also had to challenge as well. And it was the unhealthy kind.
Thank you, Daniel. Your reading and comments in relation to Michelle's and the discussion we had there suggests too that we not only are talking about things that are personal and sometimes subterranean, but also institutions, right? From the moment we're born into a family, we're already an institution. We go to school, we're in a society, we have these structures, right? And some of them we're loyal to, some of them we're not. And so you've really given us some interesting food for thought there about that relationship between the person as an individual and then the person embedded in all of these structures, which we sometimes have no choice about. We can't step outside capitalism, for example, regardless of how we feel about it. So, okay, thank you. Sandy, you're up next, so welcome. You need to unmute yourself.
Wah, wah. I'm going to be reading from a piece that I published in the Malahat, and I don't actually have the copy with me because I'm going to take pieces out from it, and so it's not in order. And I wrote this piece in 2020, the year that my father died, and it was over the last couple of years, I have written a lot about my father and published about him. Because it was a tremendous loss for me and surprising. Sometimes I think we know what we're losing, what we anticipate what we might be losing when a parent dies, but it completely caught me off guard. So this is from a piece called Preparing the Eulogy. Do not talk about grief. Grief is messy and churning. It's not sliding into your mouth as your stomach lurches and heaves. You drift alone in a violent sea while your memories sink into the deep. You watch them drop out of reach. So your father died. Whose hasn't? So he was kind of an asshole. He was also fantastic. Tell them that Hussam Eldin Ilmagar Abdulbar Ibrahim Hassan was a complicated man. Alhamdulillah. Tell them he went peacefully. There's a formula to this. Just remember him. Easy. You take me to Klondike Days in Edmonton, Alberta, and win me the biggest stuffy there is, a huge blue whale. You told me you would, and you did. Do you remember, Dad? George was there. He'll be at your funeral, a true noble friend. The Copt, you'd say, but who cares about religion? George was always so impressed by you and what you accomplished, your beautiful wife, your big car, your fancy house. Not bad for a kid from 1937 Cairo who had to learn 3 languages with an aptitude for none of them. I think he always wondered how you did it. Interior, night. The living room of a just bought 1973 show home at number 2 Garnet Crescent in Sherwood Park, Alberta. Think orange, green, gold, and the Partridge Family. The teak bookshelves you and Mom brought from Germany take up the wall behind us. They burst with books, and I love to run my hand over their spines. There's one called Living with Schizophrenia. I don't know what that means, but it's a problem. For years, I think it's F. He's always in trouble. It can't be me. I'm uber normal. Mom seems normal too. You? It's possible. I eventually learned that you were friends and colleagues with the author, and he'd given you a copy. No one in our house has schizophrenia after all. Insert laugh track. We're still in that room, sitting on the sculptured olive shag carpet. We're all there, you, me, Mom, and F. We're having a good time, aren't we? Were we playing sorry, cards, Monopoly? Maybe you were tickling me. Maybe I tickled you back. You slapped me hard across my face. If there were signs, I missed them. Everyone scatters to their corner. I lie in my bed in my everything blue bedroom and mentally retrace the steps. It was evening. You were probably tired from work. No one mentions it again. You're a big, you shout at the big white guy in the restaurant. I want to crawl under the table. You're at it again. You're a big mister, you shout again and again. The man you're shouting at laughs hysterically. Yes, I am, as he pounds his chest. I'm a big mister. You keep shouting and the whole restaurant stares at us. The man laughs harder and harder. You figure it out later. Egyptians say buh instead of p. He was a pig, but he heard big. He thought I said he was a big mister. You repeat this story until it's legitimately funny. It becomes a favorite family joke I consider telling at your funeral. You ran a German apotheca on Y Road in Sherwood Park, Alberta. Sam the vitamin man. You wore a white lab coat with pens in your pockets, Coke bottle glasses, and a black toupee to cover your losses. You smoked Rothman cigarettes behind your raised counter. They'd hang out of your mouth and surround you in air so thick I couldn't see you, just heard the pounding of compounds. You'd whip up for the locals and the Germans from the city who heard about you from their pastor. Zandara, you say, can you believe you're half Egyptian? You slap my leg. It must be the bottom half, because as far as I can see, your top half is German. You gift us $50,000 for a down payment on a house. When I thank you, you say, ach, Zandara, what do you think? You are my daughter. You pull me in for a hug and kiss my forehead. I want you to live a good life, and you will. You let my sons crawl on you. You take them to your office and show them your treasures, old coins, stamps, books, and watches. You teach them chess and you don't let them win. You ask them questions and don't wait for an answer. You open your wallet and give them $50. You're their favorite. You have no memory of the week in the hospital, no memory of screaming at the top of your lungs and abusing the hospital staff. You have no memory of the paramedics bringing you home and asking, where do you want them? Like you were a piece of furniture. I'm 7, and I'm counting to 10. Wahed, itnain, talata, arba, hamsa, sita, sabah, tamanya, tisa, ashra. Very good, Zandara, you say. I pray. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulallah. Lach with an H. I pick up some other words along the way. Imshi, yalla ya bent, yalla ya wallet, shay min fadlik, ya sharmuta. Zandara, don't say that, you laugh. I never should have taught you that. Ah, speak English. You are Canadian anyway. Thank you.
Wow, Sandy. That took guts to write that piece. And the question I want to ask is, like, I know that you didn't publish that under your full name, you published it under your initials, but did you tell anyone that it was going to be published before it was published? What's the relationship of who knows that's out there now?
My chosen family, the man that I had my children with, and my children, they knew. and the stakes weren't for them, but my partner wanted to share it with his mother and asked my permission, and I said no. So and then my brother doesn't know that it's been published, and I only told my mother maybe 3 weeks ago, or about a month ago, and she hasn't read it.
What an amazing piece, Sandy. And for me, I just hear all of the layered emotional tones, the grief, the rage, the humor, and this makes me think about perspective. And I'm just curious what you do to gain perspective on a person or people who we have a very deep and complex relationship with, and what that perspective getting looks like for you.
Well, thank you. That's a really great question. So before I published any pieces about my father, I was just writing about climate change, and it took him dying before I felt like I had the freedom to be able to write about him, and also the urgency to keep him alive. When he was alive, in some ways, in the family mythology, he was a certain kind of character, like a Jekyll and Hyde. And we just simplify who he was by just saying, oh, he's a Jekyll and Hyde. And then with the perspective that came when he died, I realized like how complicated he was of a person, and also how amazing he was. And that was sort of the surprise. I mean, I think we have a tendency to turn everyone, sinners into saints when they die. And maybe I'm doing that. But I had a narrative about my father that he was kind of a monster. And then when he died and I felt the loss, I realized like how multifaceted he was as a person. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sandy, thank you so much for sharing the work, and just how we're moving through time is always so impressive about that piece. You mentioned about the complexity of your dad and the narrative you had at one time in your life, the narrative you probably had before writing, and now the piece being out in the world. Any advice to people who are trying to write about those in their life that maybe they have a complicated relationship with them in their heart? Any advice on how to maintain the dignity and showcase the whole person when writing about people that are very close to us, and we might even have at times very painful association with them?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that some advice I might have is we can't trust our memories entirely. I actually wrote this piece in a class about memory and how unreliable it is. And in fact, I know I got things wrong, like the location or the dates, or who was there, right? I read the bit about the restaurant when my father called him a big mister to my mom, and she said that was in a parking lot. So, just things like that. So have some humility when you're writing about people. You could be wrong about some details, and that it's only one perspective. And, I think unless we can embrace the complexity of ourselves and then bring that kind of humility when we're writing about other people and give them the same kind of respect that we would want. And then also said, though, tell the truth. So, but the truth for most situations is that they're complex. So, I don't know. I don't want to write about people so that way it only forwards some kind of embittered version that I have of them, right? I'm not writing for revenge or anything like that. It's it should be an illuminatory process.
Thank you, Sandy.
yes, that's all very, it's so resonant with what we are talking about here today. It came up earlier, right? Intentions. If people who are intentions, and when we're mining this deep, intense, personal, family stuff, 9 times out of 10, it's not so we can make money from the story, right? Right? It's not malicious. We are trying to be compassionate, and we're trying to also correct the record and to fill in gaps, I guess, in the record as ethically as we can. And I guess I have a question about those gaps for everyone in the panel. If you've shown a piece of your writing to someone and they comment on it, what have been the comments and how helpful have they been? You know, I have my own litany of subjects pointing out, well, you got my life details flipped, or the sequence is wrong or something. So just, has ever, like, a reader who you're writing about brought improvements to your piece? And this is open to anyone in the panel.
I don't think I can really respond to it because I didn't share my piece with anybody who I didn't offer that possibility up.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you for the question. I know for myself, especially being second generation, and certain elements of language, specifically between my family and I, and articulation of that, I think my family has gotten to know me a lot better and realized that certain experiences are what I felt in growing up. And also, you know, them coming from India to Canada and understand, you know, their own difficulties and how hard it is to be part of a culture and a community, but also how that reverberates down has been a big illuminating piece. And also some high school teacher outside of this, I know you mentioned earlier about youth and that are unsure of themselves and identity. I know this piece, or pieces that have been shared or read in school from teacher colleagues and friends, has helped, I know, a lot of students who look like me and have very similar experience to help harmonize a lot of their life. So I think that is that element that we've all talked about, our narratives transcending us, what we wrote about, and how that goes forward and within a community or within a group of people. So that's been the effect of me, which has been very fortunate because we often don't get to see that or experience that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Daniel, I don't think there hasn't been the opportunity to, I don't know what others would want to correct. I have sometimes been curious about what other people might say. You know, my infant, of course, can't correct anything because it was all accurate from her perspective at the time. But what I'm thinking about is I'm a little bit like Sandy in that I don't talk to any immediate family about what's being written, partly because some of what I've written has caused my family members to no longer speak to me. So I think maybe the accuracy is more disturbing than something that they would want to correct. But it makes me realize that in my writing, I'm still a member of that family. I'm still connected with people in the writing, and you've got me curious about that ongoing relationship now that's so broken, and yet I continue to experience it, you know, because I am thoughtful. I do think about them. I do wonder about the impact of, say, what I've written, not just on the people who are in the book, but on their children. Not that their children have any idea I've even written these things, but I do think it has some kind of sustaining relationship aspect to it rather than corrective. But I'm curious yourself as well. What about you? Has there been corrections to the text after you've shared it with people?
Thank you, Michelle. In my case, there have been a few. So growing up, I'm a lot older than most of my cousins, and for religious reasons, like a lot of us have been separated for like a number of years. Early in the book's release, I began to get some messages from some of my cousins texting me, "I'm in the airport reading your book. Are you around?" You know, so there's been some happy reconnections. So to go back on your thought of like to stay connected or to get connections that were never there in the first place. And yeah, I've had family who've like left Jehovah's Witnesses as well, but then we never talked about it and compared notes. So I think there's been a few of the comparing notes now, right? And as I mentioned earlier, some people have completely different views on who my grandmother was, right? And I only have my view, and some of their views, right? If I talk to them, chances are I did not have the opportunity to discuss a lot like beforehand. And so I do a lot of my contextualizing now in events, right? To say so-and-so disputes that, or so-and-so complicates that. And I think once people realize our intentions, the desire to do that piecing together is greater. And there's not such a fear of the memoirist in the family. And I think that a lot of that is actually cultural, right? There's this idea, maybe it comes from different kinds of media, that the family memoirist is like a kind of enemy, a person to avoid, right? Really, what are we doing this for? We're not trying to expose our families. I was trying to expose a group, and as best I could to leave my family out of it, changing names, omitting all the details as much as I could. But there will still be people who are upset and say, no, you got this wrong. And I think this is part of our job.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks to all of you. Yeah, one of the things that stands out for me here is not only the compassion with which you're all talking about this, but also the sense that we have that we all change in time, right? And so not only are there these jigsaw versions, but our own cuts in the jigsaw might be different when we're 10, 20, 30, et cetera, right? Because our own perspective on those has changed. And so we might see that story very differently. So Paul, it's over to you now for your reading.
Great, thank you so much, Ian. I'm going to be reading from a piece titled My Name, A Timeline. It deals with the evolution of my name over the course of my life. And I was fortunate enough to be in the same issue as Sandy when this piece was published. So, My Name, A Timeline. April 1985. My mother Lamaze's for 3 days in Cranbrook's hospital. I slide into the world headfirst, slick and raw. Mumsy flips to a random page in the Guru Granth Sahib, and her pinky lands on the word that begins with the letter E. This will be the first letter in my name. I assume it isn't easy or eager, maybe euphoric? Considering that her water broke 72 hours prior is probably enigma. She tells the nurse my name will be Ender Pal. Sorry, says the nurse. Enter Pal? My mother shakes her head. No, the first part is Ender, not enter. The birth certificate arrives a month later. Name, Ender Singh Dhillon. I'm no one's pal. April 1990, my 5th birthday. Ninja Turtles on everything, napkins, tablecloth, plates, glasses, balloons, my underoos. I sit at the kitchen island, sipping cha while my eldest brother, Arabinder, orders pizzas for the party. Correct, 6 pizzas, put it under Arb. He waits. No, Arb like Arby's, minus the Y and S. He sighs. Just put it under Aaron. He hangs up, retreats to his room. I'm not sure what just happened, but my excitement grows for the moment Aaron will arrive with the pizzas. August 1990. I saunter the halls with my parents and older brothers toward the office of my soon-to-be elementary school. My dad chases me. Feels dangerous. TV has told me running in school halls is forbidden. He snatches me and spins me in the air. And they're all saying Dhillon. The N is silent in the true pronunciation of Dhillon. Once the spins end, I step inside the office with my family. The clerk hands my mother the identification forms. Mom, sign the bottom and let the little guy fill out the rest, says Arb. Let him be a big guy, says my middle brother Satminder. We call him Sap, more endearing than Sut for short. My mom nods her head. She and my dad wait in the hall. Reach for the pen and fill in our address and phone number. When it comes to the name section, I make the first mark, a straight vertical line. Put Paul down, says Arb. But, that's what we call you, says Sap. But, trust us, they both say. Name, Paul Singh Dhillon. July 1992. I spend the whole summer with family in Toronto. We go to Wonderland. This is my first time on roller coasters. I love every twist and loop. We go to Splashworks. I zoom down the water slides until my shoulder blades dull. In the gift shop, my wrinkle-flaked fingers spin a display with commemorative Wonderland name magnets. Edward, Evan, Aaron, Eric, Emily, Elliot, Elaine, Earl, Ellen, Ethan, Emmett. The names get even older. Edith, Esther, Elvis, then turn biblical. Ezekiel, Elijah, it's even in Eden. I will probably see an Ebenezer before I see my name. My cousin calls out, look what I found. I bounce over to her. She hands me a name magnet, Paul. I look up at her and smile. She tussles my hair. You're welcome, she says, then becomes mesmerized by a stuffed lion, begs her mom to buy it for her. Rotate the magnet in my hand. Even though Paul is the name I go by, I feel cheated when I see a few other kids grab their nameplates off the display. Not seeing my name my parents intended for me makes me wonder whether there's a place for me in this land. September 1998. Social studies class. The teacher calls out attendance. I raise my hand. He reads the list again, notices my last name, and the whole class watches and says, well, hope you're better than your brothers. When he says this, I commit to being better than my brothers, to prove that my family name can have a positive connotation. I'm never late. I volunteer to read. I study hard for tests. Months later, the report cards arrive. I earn an A in the class. Before the teacher unleashes the students into summer vacation, he tells me that I proved him wrong. On the walk home, my friends talk about how they want to sleep in, play video games, spend days at the lake over the break. I'm quiet, trying to imagine who else in my life I'll have to prove wrong. September 2001. I return home from basketball practice, fill a glass with chocolate milk and plop it down on the couch beside my father, He's watching the news. On the screen is a stoic face of a sick man. The news anchor goes on how to say, Balbir Singh Sodhi was slain outside the gas station he owned. Balbir was standing at the border of his business property, contemplating what flowers to plant when he was shot. He will become known as the first hate killing connected to the aftermath of 9/11. It is reported that the man who killed Balbir declared that he wanted to go out and shoot some towel heads. All my father can do is shake his head. My eyes are fixed on Balbir's middle name, Singh, is all our middle names. Mine, my father's, all male 6. I don't know what to say. My father leaves the couch and heads outside for a walk. I don't stop him because I don't believe that the consequences of the events of 9/11 could ever rattle through our small community. On our mantle is a photo of my father as a young man. Before he immigrated to Canada, he is handsome and strong, proud with his beard and turban. I'm thankful he slashed it all off. Thank you.
all as incredible as the first time I read it, and just the sense of language and play that you all are bringing to this, you know, with the wordplay, I think really adds to the complexity that we're all talking about. So thanks for that. Oh, how did it feel to complete this piece and send it out? So pointing to Michelle's question, there's the act of writing it, and then there's the act of sending it out. Maybe we could just talk about that a bit too.
Yeah, sure. I think I was kind of on a run of some pieces that were pretty grief ridden with experiences of deep loss. So I wanted something that could, have some humor component, like, draw them in with the humor so the readers are happy to take those gut punches later. So I was trying to really experiment with adding that in my writing. But I think one of the elements of sending it out into the world and being able to convey that and how much names matter, right? We started off the presentation with the land acknowledgement. So I wanted to keep adding to that conversation of what it means to be accurate in naming and also what that puts on us. I know a lot of us have talked about trying and get things as best as they can and being able to put language to things, but being able to put a name to something completely changes our relationship to a person, place, thing, or idea, and also understand that there's a history that has happened, that is currently happening, is going forward. And I think especially that moment of seeing Balbir on television when I was a kid, from the last section I read from, I really felt, because that was kind of a fulcrum point in my life and still often is, I'm feeling the reverberation of those events of 9/11. So I wanted to highlight, as well as that distinction that, all brown people aren't this kind of person, or because you have cloth over your head doesn't mean you're this kind of person. I felt I weirdly had a sense that I owed something to him. And I really wanted, that's why I also read and left off with that vignette. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. I love that story, and you and I have a lot of common ground, I think. I've also written about my name, and I've also written about its response to 9/11, because my last name, Ibrahim, was all the terrorists' name. We're not going to go there. But part of the reason that I sometimes write about my name is because when people see me, they assume I am married a Muslim man and don't see the trace ancestry in me. So I often write as almost as a response to a question, and you're kind of in the opposite situation where your name is kind of a white name. And I'm wondering whether or not you've had the experience of just surprising people when they see your name and then they meet you. Does your piece come out from here? Let me explain myself.
Yeah, that's a great question, because Paul Dhillon is definitely a very Anglo-Western name, but until people see the spelling of Dhillon, which is correctly pronounced Dhillon, then people start to wonder a little bit different about that. So I think, yeah, definitely, in the piece I talk about how my brothers have their wisdom of, because their full names they went by their full Punjabi names and they're shortening, because my one brother's Airbinder, and that's only Arb, and my other brother is Satminder, which became Sap, which are also still very unusual names. So I think that advantage, I totally believe that going by Paul has afforded me a lot of ability to code switch between environments, that has definitely saved me in a lot of occasions of certain kind of prejudice or bias, but it's also distanced me from, I think, also my community as well, right? So there's this idea of it works one way, but maybe not the other. And I think a lot of my life has been trying to find that middle ground of where I honor it. And if you carry on with the piece, that realization comes to me in the piece of how to go about that. But yeah, excellent question. Especially, I know with you mentioned writing under your initials for this piece and publishing it that way, right? To spare some I guess, potential harm towards yourself, and also to be as kind to those around you as well.
Yeah. And yet I made the decision to give my father his full name
Mhm.
in the piece. But we have so many names attached to our name that you wouldn't know which one to Google under. So I thought I was safe.
Yeah, thank you.
Paul, just
Oh.
sorry, Michelle, please go ahead.
Oh, I love this piece about your name, Paul, but I was also really moved about the places in the essays that I was reading by you, where you're not talking about your name, but you are talking about being the only brown person on the basketball court or in the bus or at the border, and just that experience. I'm also a brown person, and I've had experiences as a brown person, and it's so interesting that yours are yet so different, so much more dramatic. It seems like what my experiences are so much subtler. And it was really an eye-opener. I'm wondering if by writing about that, it enabled some relationships to change, that people could see into your experience, where prior to writing that experience of yours would have been closed off to all of us.
Yeah, I would say 100%, right? I think you hit like we'll just use this term brown for lack of a better term, right? But there's multiple shades of color and what being brown means, right? And we think about, post Sandy mentioned, and she knew like a post 9/11 world, right? It became how I felt at that moment. My brother speaks to this a lot, that it became this brown war element, right? And I think that's an important thing to educate, that there is, just because skin isn't the only marker, unfortunately we're hypervisual and skin becomes a marker, but to understand the experience within that as well. And I think going through Name In and seeing how people respond to the piece and message me about it, that it shows in terms of that it's something to be proud of, our names and what they're giving to us. And it's also not something that, even though it might be inherited from someone we're named after, everything, it's also up to us. That identity is dynamic and ongoing, to take control of that name and control of ourself as well. So I think that's something that I think a lot of people have started to understand a bit from reading the piece. If that helps answer what you were trying to get in, that variance component of it.
I love that remark, that identity is dynamic. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. Believe it or not, we're into the last 5 minutes. This has been so absolutely engrossing. There's been a couple of questions from the audience. I'd like to put one of them here to you, which comes from Janina Curtin, which is actually relevant to the last thing that all of you were discussing, and particularly you and Michelle and Paul, which is about if you're writing from somebody, writing as someone or about someone in a community that has been demonized or othered in some way, do you worry about sort of actually furthering that, adding fuel to the fire, making it worse? This is open to all of you. So, Paul.
Yeah, I think great question. Thank you so much for that one. That's always the tricky part of, what we hear stereotypically as negative in the media can often be the experience that is had. I know how I approach this is to think about, try your best to write about, in this case, the father as a whole person, where I, as the reader or the audience, can understand that I too, on a different day, could have been that person, or if my circumstances were different, I easily could have slipped into that as well. And I think that's showing those details that also shows complexity. Like I think, for instance, as a good model text, Sandy did that really well of writing about her father, where there was this one idea, but she shows a great complexity where I could see how I could have acted like that in that situation too, given XYZ things in my life. I hope that helps.
Another question from the audience is about truth and the relation to truth telling. I'll put it to all of you. This comes from Odette Auger. What it means to be truth-telling, especially if you've grown up in a particular form of truth. Daniel, you look as if you want to?
Yes. I was just looking for the unmute button, of course, as always. Thank you for that question. I think my relationship to truth has changed from one that's received to one that's actually co-created, right? So received from the people who want to control what that truth means, to more like a community-based definition, and actually one where I have authorial input into, which is sometimes when we're in groups that seek to limit our freedom, we're not offered the opportunity to have a say in what that truth looks like or sounds like.
Thank you. Another question, sorry, Paul, this one I'm going to put to Sandy and Michelle, which is about in a sense, hiding your writing from certain people, particularly given the other side, which we're involved in here with the festival, which is the publicity and the marketing side of it. How you deal with that balance, if we can call it that.
I can speak to that. I mean, Ian, you were a part of it. You saw me go back and forth about which name I was going to use when I was publishing. And this was the first time that I decided that I was going to write under a pseudonym, which is S.I. Hassan. My full name is Sandra Ibrahim Hassan. So I just went with that and kind of made a decision in the moment that, okay, I'll use that name when I'm writing about my family, and have published a few other things under that name. So it's actually easy to hide it unless I tell people. There's 64 people in attendance here, so 64 people know my little secret. But outside of that, no one does.
Michelle, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, the whole publishing on your own name thing was a challenge, because I did make a promise to my mother that I changed my name from Michelle Poirier to Michelle Brown. And I told her that I would publish under Michelle Brown. And then she passed away before I actually became a published writer. And I did begin to publish under Michelle Brown, only to discover that there are so many Michelle Browns, 3 of them, including me, poets in British Columbia. And so I reneged on that promise. But while she was alive, I did keep it. And I now publish under Michelle Poirier Brown to distinguish myself from the many other Michelle Browns, including the 2 other poets from BC. Thank
you. I see that it looks like we have about one minute left. So what I want to do is I want to thank all of you. This has been fantastic. I've known you through your work and your correspondence, but this has been just like icing on top of icing on top of icing on the cake. And I also want to thank everyone who attended, and I also want to thank the Victoria Festival of Authors team behind this. There's a lot of hidden work in this, and all of us here really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ian, and everyone. And I want to echo all of the thanks, all of you who have attended the online event today. Thank you so much for attending, and especially to our moderator and authors, Michelle Poirier Brown, David Allen Cox, Paul Dhillon, and Sandy Ibrahim, and Ian Hick. So thank you again. We can't really hear the clapping, but I'm sure that there's a resounding appreciation for all the wisdom and thoughtfulness that you've offered today. I know it's left me with a lot of thinking going on around my own writing. So thank you so much. Okay. So if for all of you participants who are listening, if you're interested in purchasing any of the books that were spoken of today, please support the festival sponsor and the VFA bookseller, Monroe Books. You can find the books featured during the festival in store and online at monroebooks.com. There are more events in the Victoria Festival of Authors this weekend. So please visit our website as well, victoriafestivalofauthors.ca, to view our festival program. This year, most festival events are available online. Our website also features Q&As with all the authors participating and a place for you to sign up for our newsletter. And you can find that all on our website. If you would like to support the festival in another way, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and encourage your friends to attend one of our upcoming events. You can also make a tax-deductible donation to Victoria Festival of Authors through our website or on VFA's page at Canada Helps. Your donations help to keep VFA engaging, accessible, and sustainable festival. We hope to see you at our next Zoom event, Banned: on Diversity, Censorship, and Children's Books, today at 3:30 Pacific time. This event was curated by Danny Ramadan, and he'll be moderating with authors Christy Jordan Fenton, Robin Stevenson, and Kathy Stinson. Once again, thanks again so much for attending, and we hope you enjoy the upcoming events.